today we're going to talk about main lesson roadmap. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I do get a lot of questions about some people that think that their main lessons might be falling short, or that they're not feeling as confident about their main lessons. And so the first thing I want to say is plan. You have to make a plan. And so there I'm going to renew our Planning for Peace, which is melisanielsen.com/peace. If you don't have a copy already, planning is huge when it comes to your main lessons. It is not, Waldorf is not open and go. We have a curriculum that is fairly open and go, but you still have to make a plan. I'll also recommend, again, Rhythms of Learning. It's a really good way to sort of gain a sense of what Steiner had in mind. And then you gain a sense of it and then walk away from it. I know that sounds kind of silly, but the reason why I want you to gain a sense of it is because I want you to gain a sense of the way a living lesson should come together. So it should have several parts. It should have your thinking part and your feeling part and your willing part. It should have some movement to it. It should have, again, because you've planned this all out, it should have pieces to it that are iconic every day. And that doesn't mean you want to let it go. You want to let it go so that it becomes too stale. For sure, you don't want that, because this is a living education, so that should be changing bits every day. And so I want you to be sure that you're giving it the breath that it needs, the life that it needs. But at the same time, it should have a nice rhythm every time. So our school day just sort of goes, we get up and we start between 7:30 and 8. And that's when everybody's up and moving, chores are getting done, breakfast is starting, and we're usually eating breakfast by 8:15. We tend to do our scripture study, our morning devotional at the same time. And then we get on with our day. And that means we go for a walk. So we're getting that movement piece out of there. And I know that that's hard for a lot of people, this idea of getting everybody out of the house in the morning, but it is so golden to get them moving first thing in the day. So there's this static electricity stuff that builds up over the night, and you can almost see it popping off of them. They're not totally here yet. It's they were in this dream space, and then they get here and they're trying to sort of get into their bodies. And the best way to do that is to sort of go on a walk. When you go on the walk tends to ground them. It tends to pull them down. And I don't go by a playground. Nobody rides their scooters. It's not a bicycle. It's not a bike ride in the morning. It's a walk. It's everybody's feet on the ground walking. And we have, I have a completely mapped out route. So I suggest that it's about a mile. And I know that sounds like a long ways, but you know what? Soraya's been able to walk a mile with no problem since she was about 4. And so it's really good in the morning to get that good, vigorous, get yourself a good, 3,600 steps out in the morning and really get that going. When you come back, you want to have this place that I call pliable exhaustion. And that means they're too exhausted to fight you, but pliable enough that you can still get work done, the school work done. So you come in, when we come in from the walk, usually, I say the same thing. I've said the same thing for over 15 years. Go to the bathroom, let's get a snack, and then we're getting busy. I say the same things every time. And so everybody uses the potty. They come and get a drink of water. Usually there's a snack out there. If they need a snack, it may not be snack time yet, but I usually have something near. And the snack tray is golden because you can put leftover breakfast pieces on it and then pop it in the fridge and get it out. It's easy. Then you can add to it over the day if you need to, put some apples on it or some other fruit or some cheese or whatever. That's how I keep from having to stop every 20 minutes because somebody's hungry. So that then starts to anchor. It starts to pull together our morning. Everybody's gone to the bathroom. Everybody's had a drink. We'll come together for a gathering. And then, on the years that I had everybody here, now I only have 3 at home, but, and it looks very different because most days it feels like I only have 2 at home. Eleanor's kind of doing her own thing. But when we would come together and, have our verse for the morning. And we still use the there lives in me an image verse. So there lives in me an image, and we've changed it a bit, of all God wants for me. Until I have become it, my heart cannot be free. And so we'll start with a verse, and we use it for all the grades. In the schools, they change it up for the older years. And it's really to give them more. It changes a little bit with their development, so you can absolutely change it. We do it more as a family piece, as like a family anchoring. And then you can do more verse work when you're separate with each child. But so we would do that. And then we would do our breaking apart. So I am a firm believer in teaching each child their lessons, even though you have many children, maybe. So there was a year that I had 4 main lessons and an infant, and that was a fun year. She was really busy. And then Sam was in kindergarten and he was really busy. So what we did is we always had a big kid paired with a little kid, and it was super helpful that way. So we paired them up, and I would put a big kid in charge of helping with Sam. Daddy was usually in charge of helping with the baby, but if he wasn't there because he was also working, then we would work around it. I'd nurse her, make sure that she was happy, put her. We had a really nice. A really nice swing that wasn't a regular wind-up swing. It was like a hammock, and she was in that. And we made a rhythm out of it, and everybody puts a hand in helping to take care of the baby. It becomes a family endeavor. Everybody's helping. And so we had helpers. And then when there wasn't somebody that was helping, they were either off doing their reading. And I'm a huge believer in an hour or so sustained reading a day, especially from the time they're about 10 and up. It should be about an hour a day. Below that, I usually go about 5 minutes per year. So, and you can hear more about that in our reading video. We have a reading video here that, and that really helps. I always try to make it geared towards what their main lesson is. So that helps you with the main lesson work. So it's less reading aloud and more like greasing the wheels for that main lesson. They're getting into it and they know what it is that they're going to be talking about. And then it becomes more of a discussion rather than a lecture. And you're pulling it in light, it's a living piece. They're already hearing the stories about it. And then you're bringing in the rest of the cultural pieces about it. Say like for Egypt, Sam is still working on Egypt. And so he's been reading some stories from Charles Kovach's book, and he's reading those on his own. And we watched a little documentary, Engineering an Empire, on Egypt. Today we're going to be doing maps about Egypt, and we're going to be talking more about the people. So we're keeping it alive. We're talking about it. Daddy's been to Egypt. So Daddy's going to talk about his experiences in Egypt, the things that he saw, and how, did you know that when you're standing there looking at those pyramids, if you turn around, there's a McDonald's, that kind of stuff that makes it real to the kids because he's been there. So whenever possible, we try to pull in things that things that, and if you know people that have been to some of these places, it's very helpful to hear their firsthand experiences on these things. Like for instance, when we do Rome next year, I remember as a child going there. I remember going to Pisa. I remember climbing the Leaning Tower. I remember those things. I was really young, but I remember those things. So I can impart those to my child. It's okay if you don't have those experiences, but if you know people in your life that have, it's always helpful to bring those people into your life during your main lessons. And it doesn't have to be obviously during the main lesson time. Maybe you have a dinner with a friend that has been to this place, and you have this friend talk all about it. Maybe you have a friend that's French and you talk about some of the places in Europe during the Renaissance and during the things that sort of happen that we study in 7th and 8th grade. And so bringing in people that that maybe have had those experiences is a great way to augment and add to your main lesson time. And again, keeping it alive. The other pieces that keep it alive is really you have to study. You have to study and you have to understand the time periods that you're working with. You have to know the information. So that means before you put your child down in front of a documentary, you have to watch it and you have to love it and you have to be excited about it. And I get really excited and I recommend the Engineering and Empire series all the time because I love that series. I love it. I've watched it. Peter Weller's like my friend, and and he's the guy that runs this, that does the series, and I feel like he's like this dude that I can turn to and ask historical questions of. And so I get a good sense of what it is that I'm teaching that allows you then to bring it in a much more living way. Then it rolls off your tongue. It's a very easy thing. It's not a struggle for you. And you might be thinking, oh crap, I don't know that I can do that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can, I promise. It just takes some practice. And what's awesome, especially if you have several children, is when you do it the first time, it'll get easier the second time. Then it gets easier the third time. And by the time you're on the fourth time, like I'm on the fourth time now, I'm thinking I could teach this in my sleep. And you can ask me questions about Egypt while I'm sleeping, and it'll be fine because I'll be able to answer them. By the time we get to Soraya, I'm hoping we're going to Egypt for her fifth grade year. It'll be so much fun. So really think about ways that you can bring it more living to them. So, a lot of families will do, they'll do a meal from the region that they're studying, and we've done that, or they'll dress like the people that they're studying. We've done that too. Coming together with all of these great ideas really helps you then bring those lessons together. Another thing that I want to say is sticking with the timeline of the material is going to help and ensure that your child is engaging with it. So if your child isn't engaging, you need to step back and ask yourself why. Is the material right? Is the age, is the block in the right place? Now I'm going to say and I've talked about this before, when I was, this is why planning is so important. When I was planning out Egypt for Eleanor's fifth grade year, so this was one child ago, I was planning it and my boys had loved it. And so I was like really excited. I was thinking, we're going to have a lot of fun with this. She's going to love talking about Cleopatra. She's going to love talking about, she hated it. But what I have to tell you, when I was planning, I had this prompting to shorten that block. And I kept thinking, why? Why am I feeling this? Why am I feeling this way? So I just thought, I'm just going to plan it anyway. And guess what? When it came time, she was so not into it. So not into it. So I ended up shortening it up. Had I listened to myself during my planning, there would have been no stumbles. I would not have been scrambling for the next thing to do. But what I ended up doing was shortening it up. We usually spend about 2 weeks on Egypt. We ended up spending like one, and I packed in there what needed to be packed in there, and then we moved on because she was not having it. And that doesn't mean that, it just meant that she was not really connecting with that culture and those stories. Doesn't mean anything else, but I still gave her the material. And but there are times that that maybe the material is not matched right for the child's age. So often I'll get those questions. I'll get the questions of, well, I brought this to my child and it felt really flat and they weren't into it. And so I asked questions like, well, how prepared were you? Could you live, eat, and breathe the subject? Like really, really prepared. Because that's when, and it also depends on the temperament of the child. Different temperaments, some temperaments are not going to allow you to make any mistakes. Some temperaments aren't going to care, but some temperaments are not going to allow any mistakes. And so you really want to make sure that you hold that space of authority, that ego in that lesson, so that you are the one that knows what's going on and that they're turning to you for that information. So I ask, how prepared were you? What were the activities that you were bringing with it? Did you make sure that you made it a living experience? Did you bring in a field trip? Did you bring in, some art from this piece or from this lesson? Did you bring in, maybe a documentary for an older child? And I don't usually do documentaries until they're like fifth grade and up. So really think about what things you brought to the lesson. And whenever a lesson falls flat, I always step back and I always try to evaluate what happened. Okay, so let's see. I have a question here. Rhythm question. How much time does your morning walk last? What time are you home? What time are you beginning your gathering in circle before your lessons? My morning walk lasts between 30 and 45 minutes. And then we get home and we get started. We try to get out of here between 8:30 and 9, and then we're home before 10. And sometimes we can get out of here quicker. That's like the only time that I'm ever rushing in the morning. It's that's the only time I'm really looking at my watch, because I want to get started. I know the sooner we get started, the sooner we'll be done with the school day. And especially if we have things in the afternoon, I'm trying to make sure that we keep that morning going. So that means that I have to plan, right? I have to know what we're making for breakfast. I have to know, I have to make sure that I've got all of that set out and ready to go. If it's a morning that I want to make a longer breakfast, a bigger breakfast, it's going to take more cooking, then I try to reserve that for mornings when I know we don't have anything in the afternoon. So it's not as important that we start by that 10 o'clock time, or that 9:30 time. So I really try to keep an eye on that and watch the schedule. And in watching the schedule, it's super helpful to me to then sort of know what's coming up next. So with regards to how long does school take, for a first grader alone, you're looking at start from the time you start your gathering / circle to the end, you're looking at anywhere between 60 and 90 minutes tops. So these are young children. These are young children. Their attention span is going to be shorter. They're not going to be as engaged in the material for a long time. So you're on one day, you're going to be doing a story and doing some art from it. That's going to be might be your longest day. Especially if you're painting and it takes a little bit longer. And then the next year, you're doing recall and summary from it. So depending on how the temperament of your child will depend on how quickly they get through that writing. And so you want to make sure that you've got all of that laid out. For a second grader, again, 60 to 90 minutes. Third grader, I would say 90 minutes, maybe a little bit more. Your stories have more meat to them. They're more in depth. Your art pieces might be more detailed, and your summaries are a little bit longer. By the end of third grade, I start to let them, that last lesson block in third grade, I start to kind of have them dip their toes into writing their own summary. We've been doing it together, first and second, and all of third grade. So here we are in that last lesson block. Let's see what you can do. And they're still going to need your help a little bit. But I really try to get them starting to write some of their own work. And then in fourth grade, we're really working on writing their own work. Now, there are lessons in fourth grade where we do a lot of grammar pieces, or we're going to definitely do that together. But but I might say, for instance, when we do past, present, future, I might say, I want you to write this summary in the past. Or I want you to write the summary like it's happening right now in the present. Or I want you to write it like it's going to happen in the future. So we'll have pieces like that where I will challenge them to do some writing on their own that way. So, but again, so third grade's about 90 minutes. Fourth grade, you're getting into 90 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. But again, you can pack a lot in. They're really still in a very pliable place. Fifth grade, their lessons start to get longer, their material gets more in depth, especially as you start to cover not just the culture, but then the history portions of it. So that starts to take a little bit longer. By sixth grade, you're looking at 2 hours as well. So I would make sure that you keep that in mind. So that means, though, when you're rotating through your children, you've got we're usually done here by 2. And even when we had 4 at home, because the way I rotate them through, and we have some podcasts on schooling many children. And if you're a Thinking, Feeling, Willing member, there's a whole mom lesson on schooling several children. So I want you to utilize those resources to you for if that's a concern of yours. But I'm just going to briefly say what we do is I rotate through them. So somebody is doing their reading while I'm doing a lesson with somebody else, and then another person's helping with the younger ones, and then we switch. And so that means you have to really work on the relationships in your home so that everybody likes each other. Doesn't mean that they don't fight, they don't have struggles, but you really want to keep the massive contention stuff that I see happening in some homes. you need to sort that one out. Like really sort it out, because there shouldn't be like, you don't want to be like moderating a fist fight over here while you're doing main lessons over here. You want whatever child is in charge of those little ones to be somebody that's pliable and happy to read them a book or sit with them or play a game with them or draw with them, whatever it is that you need. That's part of being in a family. That's part of homeschooling Waldorf together. That's part of this whole big piece of how you do it in a peaceful manner. So I want you to really keep that in mind. If you're struggling with that, please feel free to drop me a note, because I'm happy to give you some tips on that. When you have that peace in your home, it comes across in your main lessons. It doesn't mean I don't lose my crap sometimes. I do, absolutely. But it means that they all know that this is safe, that this is a place where everybody loves each other. And so they have a vested interest in helping out, in helping each other. And yes, Mom, I can help you with Soraya for a few minutes while you do that over there, because I see that that's what you're doing. Now, they don't have the appreciation, but they do have the love. A lot of moms get hung up on, my kids don't appreciate me. Well, they don't, because they're little. They're not supposed to appreciate you yet. It doesn't happen until you get much, much older. Like, I'm 45 and I have a 17-year-old, and I called my mom a few weeks ago and I said, I'm really sorry I was such a jerk when I was 17. Because now I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Before, I just really loved my mom. And now I like really, really appreciate what she put up with when I was 17. And that's something that doesn't happen until you get into that space. So that appreciation piece doesn't come until you really, really can see the other side of it.